Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Mowing After Dark. Whoops, don't want to do that. Mowing After Dark here on the College Football Mafia Network. I am, of course, Moen. My co-host is, of course, Rock and Rant, and we're here to talk college football and anything and all between, including Sean Connery's back here. How are you doing tonight, Rock?
I'm good. I didn't. We did not coordinate wearing hats from a secondary or associated team we like. It just kind of happened.
Yeah, I just stumbled on this West Virginia hat in the truck stop today, and I had to pick it up. It's got a nice little soft leather patch on it. It's mossy oak. I figure if I'm going to be out walking in the woods and camouflage myself, I might fit in better, and I might camouflage myself a little better when I visit Morgantown. So,
was it a Buc-ee's? Is there Buc-ee's in your neighborhood?
There's no Buc-ee's here in Ohio yet. It was a Flying J Travel Plaza, but
I know them. Not as fun as a Buc-ee's.
No. Yeah, I got that. Picked up a Four Loko pack of Reds, 6-pack on $6 on Pump 12. So, all good things. All good things. Yeah, NCAA basketball Final Four is shaping up. It looks like Auburn's probably going to pull ahead of Michigan State. Sorry, spoilers alert. Last I saw, it was 4 minutes left, and they were up by 13. We were talking about it beforehand. The only game I really saw any majority amount, I won't even say majority amount of, I saw the last 3 minutes of Purdue Houston on Friday night. Which was it was a game. It was a game. But yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit tonight about North Carolina. We're going to be talking Super League. We're going to be talking SEC. We're going to be talking Big Ten. We're going to be talking ACC implosion. And I hope you got your questions and comments ready for us. I want to thank everybody for filtering in here. I'm sure we're going to get a big bump once that basketball game officially ends. I want to remind everybody, if you want to help support the College Football Mafia Network and what we do here at Mowing After Dark, go ahead and click the little cash icon there down in the window. You can leave a super chat. You can become a member. You can gift a membership. Those all help us keep the lights on here. Speaking of which, we've got Ryan Willie, the evil badger. I haven't done his evil laugh in a while.
He deserves it for 14 months.
Absolutely. 14 months soldier in the Army. CFB Addiction said Syracuse and Colorado should have given the NCAA the bird and played the spring game anyway. Listen, I don't know why they would even do that. It's just they got to talk about it and act like they wanted to do it. And I think just the fact that they showed they were willing. The other thing I think might be an issue is there might be a liability issue here.
I bet you there is. You only covered for what you're covered for. Most people don't overbuy insurance for their programs.
Right.
So it would be interesting. There's a reason why they don't, that most programs are not in pads from day one of spring practice either. So they just might not have been prepared. But, it's like a lot of people. You put out a press release, you get a lot of good press for a couple of weeks. You keep yourself in the cycle. I don't know if it's spinning anybody from the upcoming transfer portal to Colorado because they were willing to pay a spring game with Syracuse. But, at least starts the conversation. And I think perceptionally it's pretty awesome because it counters the Nebraska zone, right? And the Texas zone of going to the complete opposite extreme. Like one wants to play a game, the others are trying to figure out how to hide from everybody.
Yeah, true enough. And it's when you're playing a spring game against your own team, you can know that the defensive end on your team is not looking to kill your quarterback. I don't know that I could trust kids, especially these 18 and 19-year-olds. It's going to be their first action in a game. These mid-quarter enrollees, early enrollees, that they're not going to go out there and just absolutely smash Syracuse's quarterback or Colorado's quarterback. So, plus kids get chippy. It's easy when your own team gets chippy and you keep all that shit in the locker room. It's a little tough on the outskirts. But
absolutely.
Thank you, Ryan Willie, for the membership continuation for 14 months. We appreciate you around here. I don't know if you've been to see a Brewers game yet, but I hope you do get to go see one soon and you enjoy that. We're going to start off with some shout outs here. Nathan Campbell says, hi, guys. Good to see you, Nate.
What's up, Nathan?
Brian Willie, which we just talked to him. He says, hi, CFM. Stormy Cyclone. Would love to have a mic on Bubba Cunningham for the last 3 years and going forward. Brother, I don't think you want to sit through about the 2 years, 362 full days of stuff that aren't related to conference realignment.
Plus, just, send him a message on Signal. Maybe he'll add you.
Well, that's true. Houston whooped Tennessee. That was a crazy first half defensively. I didn't watch the game, so I'll have to take your word for it. But I'm glad to see Tennessee lose. John Dry, hey y'all, I'm about to take a nap before I go to work. I got called in today. Says I guess tonight, not today. Well, John, appreciate you stopping by to say hello, listen to us on demand, and drop us a comment. Let us know what you liked and disliked. Bob Swanger says, hey CFM, how's everyone doing tonight? Doing well, Bob. Doing well.
Hey, pause right there real quick. While
Yep.
we're going through roll call, it would be great if everyone whose schools are in the middle of spring practice right now dropped us like 2 sentences or a sentence about how you're hearing about what's going on at your school, like anything interesting, so we can check it out later.
Absolutely. And while we're speaking about it, I remember getting a new webcam. This damn autofocus never focuses. Daniel Gygax says, hi, everyone. Good to see you, Daniel. Daniel just released a short yesterday. Suggest everybody check it out. He's going to have a new short sometime this week, so definitely check that out. And by the way, as a programming note, tomorrow at noon, new Wild Ute University releases. This one is for the general public. Who are the top 5 brands in college football? Ute has once again done the math. So I think some people might be surprised, but definitely I would suggest people take a look at that, see where it leaves them. I think you'll find, well, I was pleased with it. We'll go that far.
Yeah, you're born on home plate, man.
Absolutely. Joaquin Morales is here. He says, hey, Mo and Rock and Rant, CFM fam. Good to see you. Jay Applewhite is here. He says, let's go. Good to see you, Jay. Thanks for stopping by. Caleb Ramirez is here. Hi, all. Good to see you. UNC grad, I'm ready. Go Heels. Almighty Finn's here. He's letting us know Michigan State's getting smacked by Auburn. Yeah, last I saw it was 13 points.
Chuck Barkley's going to be happy.
Yeah. When does UNC and UVA announce intent to leave? Great question. Michelle Weintraub says, hey, everyone. Love the hat mowing. Yeah, I wish it was in focus for you, Michelle. Let me see if I can try and convince this camera to autofocus.
It's not an autofocus issue. This is just what happens when you wear the Crown Royal filter on your camera.
I guess so. I got the Moen's Place bar behind me, so I guess that's the issue. Almighty Finn's letting you know Miami to the Big Ten.
I would love it, man.
Connor Moses says the Big pretend basketball natty drought continues. Please, UNC, join the SEC, Mafia SEC. That's like your opinion, Clint Moses. But the Big Ten college football title drought, it ain't ending anytime soon. Because it's over. We've got 2, and we're going to go on a run here. Antoine Johnson says, hey, y'all. Good to see you, Antoine. Hope you're doing well, sir. If UNC can't defeat North Carolina Board of Governors, will both the Big Ten and SEC pass on UNC if they can't shed NCSU? This is not an OSU-O situation. North Carolina Board of Governors will always put North Carolina system ahead of just one campus, UNC Chapel Hill. Great point, Scott Gibbs.
The SEC is probably more likely to swallow that pill than I think the Big Ten would be, but that's just like an opinion based off of nothing than us all talking about the same stuff for the last year or two around North NC State Wolfpack backpack kind of thing. What about you, Mo? What do you think?
Listen, I think as long as North Carolina State is taken care of, they'll be fine. What exactly that entails, I do not know. I don't know. So
I mean, to me, the situation, the fact that someone introduced legislation this past week in North Carolina, don't know where they come from, where their motivations are to make sure that the two schools at least continue to play no matter what. That almost might be an indication, but we don't know if that's representative of the state legislature at all, or just one legislator proposing something to get ahead of what he thinks might happen.
Noel Ramirez. At this point, I say everyone just draw straws. Shortest one gets to pick SEC or Big until the Big and SEC say we're okay at the number of teams we have. Well, we're going to have to set up the pool of teams to draw from first.
What's the matter? You don't want to have, random luck on like Powerball for conference realignment. And the next thing you know, we've got Wake Forest and Boston College and Syracuse and I don't know, picking up all your spots and leaving no room for Notre Dame.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Let's not do that. Doc Gibbs says, how is UVA linked to UNC? They're longtime partners, oldest rivalry in the South. We talked about it a little bit on Friday, Doc. I don't know if you saw that, but originally Virginia and North Carolina were the two schools propositioned by the Big Ten before they invited Maryland and Rutgers. So they were desired by the Big Ten then, and then they both got together and they disagreed then. They did not want to join the Big Ten then, and apparently we're to believe, according to Greg Flugar and other people, that North Carolina and Virginia are kind of joined at the hip.
Maybe the public Ivies have intertwined themselves.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to talk about North Carolina right as soon as we get through the shout outs here, Doc Gibbs. So you want to stay tuned. I don't know what that said. If young
sounds
guys
like the Five Guys.
Okay, have inside info on how North Carolina Board of Governors bypassed, even though they are in control, and UNC Chapel Hill goes on its way. Again, I think it's going to be a long-term contract that takes care of North Carolina State. What that number is, I don't know what that number is. I don't. Is it just a one-time annuity or an annuity? Is it just like a one-time bulk payment to North Carolina State? I don't know, Doc Gibbs. We're going to have to see. But I do know that Big Ten and the SEC have North Carolina as their number one target. And I'm going to show you why here in a second. RT, oldest rivalry in the South, Old South schools, tobacco, moonshine, or something like that. Friends Call Me Shaw says, Florida State football buzz, true leadership on both the offensive and defensive side of ball. Seriously missing all of last season. Yeah, well, that wasn't the only thing that was missing. Bagman, don't worry, UNC and North Carolina State fans. I'm sure at least the Big 12 will take y'all if you don't get a Power 2 invite. I don't think you have any reason to worry about that, Bagman. So let's talk about it. I keep getting the question a lot. Why is North Carolina the favored selection for the Big Ten and the SEC? Why isn't it Florida State? Why isn't it Clemson? Why do both conferences want North Carolina so badly?
Because everyone who's been super focused on this conversation that is not an expert in what those conferences are doing, and that includes us, has been laser focused on media TV value only. And they're basing it off of what they think are the values to those conferences on those stats against those schedules in their current conference. They're not factoring in that if you're the SEC or the Big Ten for either of those two states, that you're going to get cable carriage fees for however long that matters, right? And it does matter. And it possibly matters not just to your local Spectrum thing, but also to your YouTube TV channel. Granted, however long that's going to last is going to be a while. You're getting two schools that have buku endowments, right? And have the financial security. They get a ton of research and they have a ton of political power. And it would be hard to say that they don't have more political power than others do, especially Virginia, more so than their athletic weight. And the academic alliance for Big Ten, which you'll probably talk about even more, matters a lot as well. So it's not just the here's Wild Utes really good detailed analysis of college football ratings and that they're worth $60 million or $40 million right now against their current schedule. It's what will it be worth in conference against a different schedule, which really actually lends itself better to Florida State and Clemson. But also those other things. What's the makeup of their audience, even if it's smaller? How much research are they doing that they can get shared? What new programs for the Big Ten will get access to research that they don't currently? I don't know everything that's going on at UNC and Virginia, but like Miami is a very specific instance. None of those Big Ten schools have a marine science school that's one of the best in the world, right? Because of just where they're located. So we just think of it in terms of the media rights deal because that's what we hear and are familiar with. So I know it's frustrating. It's frustrating from a Miami fan perspective as well. What do you think? What did I miss there, Owen?
All right. Well, let me put it up here. This is a slide from our next members only live stream. How the contenders fit into the Big Ten. These are 10 core commonalities that all Big Ten schools share: academics, research, AAU membership outside of Nebraska, athletic success, Olympic sports, or athletic breadth, how many sports they actually cover and sponsor, student population, alumni networks, graduation rates, endowments, and economic impact on the state and locality where they are. Do you know how many of the points that North Carolina hits on this chart, Brock?
Didn't recall them all instantly, but at least 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10.
It's 10 out of 10. It is 10 out of 10. That's why they're so desirable to the Big Ten. Yes, you get into new TV markets. Yes, the actual rate of growth in North Carolina is substantial. And not only is it a rate of growth, it's a rate of wealth growth. You're getting a lot of high profile jobs to come in there that pay well. So they are definitely, that's going to impact that economic impact significantly. The fact that you can go to college in North Carolina, come out of college in North Carolina, and find a job with a college degree in North Carolina, that's going to help you stay in North Carolina. That's what they hope for, and be a good source of tax revenue for the government. But yeah, North Carolina hits all 10 of these. And these are also there's a lot of things on here that the SEC cares about. They do care about academics. Look at some of the recent ads: Texas A&M, Mizzou. Those are all AAU schools. Florida's an AAU school. I think Georgia's trying to become an AAU school. You've got Vanderbilt in there. Research is another thing with Texas and Texas A&M. Athletic success, yeah, the SEC's looking for that. North Carolina's got that. They've got one of the top basketball programs. You can even make an argument that North Carolina is the best basketball program in college sports. Olympic sports, they support a lot of Olympic sports. Student population, though, this is huge, guys. You know how many students are at North Carolina? It's a lot. Alumni networks. You know what else alumni networks have, guys? Boosters. Graduation rates. Always want to see kids graduating from your school. Endowments. Love those schools with big endowments. When it comes to endowments, size does matter, guys. And then, like I said, economic impact. It's huge. It's huge. So it's definitely something that I think we need to keep in context and understand that, yeah, we can look at the ratings. Yeah, we can look at brand value. But there's also a whole subset of things that don't actually even necessarily directly involve college football that can make a particular candidate desirable. And I think North Carolina has that in spades. They really do. Especially doing some crunching the economic numbers and seeing the rate of growth and the rate of wealth growth within the state of North Carolina was pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, plus the other thing I think that people get stuck on, and I understand it too, right, is when you become really well versed in something or you get really interested in a thing, you hear all the parameters that are going on and take that with you going forward. But the world the world we're talking about from the moment that USC and UCLA left, and then the other things happened and the other conferences all had their sort of impact. a lot of things have changed. A ton of things have changed in the last 12 weeks. If you are a university in the United States right now that is trying to maximize research dollars, like there's been a fundamental change on just that aspect alone. So it's hard when things massively change. I know there's a comment we'll get to about some of these things didn't apply to Stanford. I know you're going to tell us there's probably some extenuating circumstances,
Sure.
but just broadly, it's 2025. It's not 2022 or 3 or 4. And yes, things do change. They don't completely go from one, they haven't flipped 180, but there is an evolution of what schools might be looking for versus when it was a decision to give Washington and Oregon a half share and still come in, and the others went to the Big 12.
Yeah, and I would say outside of Oregon, which was the outlier and had to be fought for, Washington hits all these things too. The University of Washington went 10 for 10 on this. Oregon would not go 10 for 10 on this, but they were good
but
enough.
Phil Knight could pay for the other two.
That's right. They could pay for Phil Knight could pay for the parts they missed. So, got our first super chat of the evening from our friend Opie Didon. Am only here for the charts and West Virginia hats. Congratulations, Opie. You got the West Virginia hat. You got a chart. Tomorrow at noon, a new episode of Wild Ute University releases. It will have more charts. That's open to the public, Opie. That'll be a public video. And then that other chart I showed, that is a teaser for the Big Ten Contenders members only live stream. Although I did spoil it and tell you that North Carolina went 10 for 10 on it. But thank you for the super chat. Let me go ahead and give you some sounders here, Opie. Let me see. We haven't done Macho Man in a while.
But the cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah. Macho Madness, yeah.
And then we'll give you a...
Whoa, Nelly!
Thank you so much for the super chat, Opie. It is much appreciated here, helping us keep the lights on. Yeah, we've got more charts coming. And the data is reliable and accurate. And we're not making presumptions based off the charts. We're just telling you what the charts say. Bagman wants to know, how good is the tobacco on Tobacco Road? Do tell. It's toasted.
It is definitely, you can smell tobacco when you get into certain parts of the Carolinas if you've ever driven through it for the first time.
None of it helped Stanford get into the Big Ten. That's a story for another day, and that's somebody else's story to tell. But eventually someone's going to write a story about what happened to the Pac-12, and it's going to be insane. I think you'll enjoy it. I just don't know everything to write everything. I just know some things about everything.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say it's not all of what it appears, and you are comparing completely different circumstances and political situations that have only started to become rumored to or leaked out there, and one day it will be on a great Netflix show.
We got Kuz stopped in here. He said, "Dang, is Merwin wearing a West Virginia hat, or am I seeing things?" You are not, sir. I visit Morgantown frequently for business related reasons, so I figured I'd get me a camouflage West Virginia hat to blend in down there.
Yeah, got one on the back wall here too, the fake wall.
Oh yeah, there's West Virginia right there.
We might start selling NIL spots for this, super chat, and get your logo on the back wall for 4 weeks or something.
Yeah, I picked this one up at Pilot Flying J. It's a Pacific headwear. It's mossy oak camouflage, leather patch sewn on the front or attached to the front somehow. Pretty comfortable hat. So I saw it. I go to West Virginia often. I root for West Virginia when I'm not rooting for Ohio State. So, yep, go Mountaineers. I also have to root for University of Cincinnati too. So go Bearcats. Doc Gibbs says, keep in mind that a lot of the points NCSU has, because its largest in North Carolina, is major engineering brand, is key to research triangle, so could just as well say that NCSU checks these boxes. I've done a comparative. It does not check all those boxes. And I know it's a better Carnegie rated institute as far as research goes, but this is what the Big Ten really does put a lot of weight on. Even though they say they don't, AAU membership. NCSU would have to be an AAU member. I know they've said in the past you don't have to be. If North Carolina State gets AAU membership in the next year and a half, then I think you have to start seriously considering them as a Big Ten candidate. But until they get that AAU membership, yeah, there's people in the Big Ten still pissed off that Nebraska lost it and hasn't done a damn thing to get it back.
I mean, Big Ten says that it's not important, right? But there's nobody in the Big Ten that has voted to accept a non-AAU member in, right? Because everybody who voted for Nebraska as an AAU member. Like, there's no one in administration or anyone within the conference that has actually followed through on the talk yet to vote somebody in that hasn't. Granted, and there has been multiple expansion over the last 20 years.
I agree 100%. Agree 100%. But I mean, listen, AAU, it's not even a thing you can apply to. It's just when they decide they're going to admit new, it's almost like the mafia. When they're ready to open the books and assign new capos and members, they have to decide to do it themselves, which is pretty interesting when you think that, what was it, just last year Miami got invited to the AAU?
It's 2 years now.
2 years now? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the thing, I know there's a lot of people talking about how XYZ is really close to getting in there. But there have been legitimately, we did this probably when I first started jumping on Moen's show now and then. There have been decade to 12-year periods where no new members were admitted. There's sometimes where it's like 2 years and they admit they admit new members. It's not a regular thing where, you get brought into the made men category and they read you the Omerta and you're like in the mob. It happens when it happens, and it could happen very soon for schools, and it could be their schools are completely qualified to get there and have done everything that they can, and for whatever reason the monopoly on it waits a decade. Like, I don't know. I don't think any of us really know.
Joseph Curligan Jr., I would like to see the SEC get North Carolina, Georgia Tech, SMU, Florida State, and Miami to have all the major TV markets in the southern states. Well, Georgia Tech, I mean, you've already got a piece of that with Georgia. UGA is basically an Atlanta school. So SMU, okay, but you've already got Texas covered twice with the two biggest brands in Texas.
Right.
Florida State adds a brand value. Florida State or Miami add brand value. North Carolina gets you into a new southern market.
Yeah.
But
I would be stunned if Miami gets to the SEC. Not because I honestly don't think a lot of SEC schools want to actually recruit against Miami. With Miami could sit there and not have that albatross of not being in the SEC over them with the talent that's down in South Florida. Personally, I'm sure Vanderbilt would be happy, get another private school in, so they're not out there on their own. But I just have zero expectations of that ever happening.
Yeah, and that's another thing. 16 out of 18 Big Ten schools are public universities, large public universities. There are two outliers. USC and Northwestern are the only outliers. Doesn't mean they won't take a private school, but it means that the schools that are going to be in front outside of Notre Dame, preferential treatment is going to go to a large public university. NCSU has surpassed UNC with its research Centennial campus and is the largest school in North Carolina. These are facts. I'm not disputing those facts, Doc Gibbs, but I am disputing the fact they're not AAU members. It's a country club, and the Big Ten likes people who are part of that country club.
And the SEC likes flagship schools.
They do. And I guess UNC is the flagship of North Carolina. I know UVA is the flagship of Virginia.
Absolutely is.
McStevens, go TCU. Horned Frogs, TCU to the Big Ten. Hey, stay tuned for that members-only stream, Mick. I put TCU up there. TCU is listed. I put them up there so you can see how they measure up.
I think the precondition should be that if TCU actually gets a bid to the Big Ten, they first have to have a secret cam set up on Numbskull News the moment the announcement's happening so we could all watch it live.
The Big Ten should get Stanford, Cal, Miami, Florida State to force Notre Dame to join the Big Ten due to all rivals being in the Big Ten Conference. and telling all schools not to schedule them. That's certainly a number. Problem is with Notre Dame, that leaves you with an odd number. You're going to have one more to come along.
Plenty of good options. What is definitely not a good option is telling all schools not to schedule Notre Dame.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to do that anyway. It's too much
unless you
time.
like lawyers a lot more than you should.
I mean, you can tell your conference members that they can't schedule Notre Dame. Michelle Weintraub says Auburn wins all 4 number 1 seeds, advance to the Final Four. I think I've got 3 of them in the Final Four on my bracket. Sorry, guys. I'm probably going to win the bracket challenge again, even though I don't watch college basketball.
This has been for me, it's been an unexciting tournament.
Doc Gibbs asks, is Notre Dame in AAU? Yes, they are.
Yes, they went with
Miami.
Miami.
They were one of the ones that was admitted with Miami.
If anything, they got a real good benefit of the doubt because they're not a big research university historically, because they've been very focused on undergraduate and a premier school, but not necessarily as graduate focused. There's definitely grad programs at Notre Dame, but like the history of it was much more about undergrad.
Yeah, and some of it's, if you look at the AAU membership, it's not all about research. Sometimes it's about the academics you have at your school.
For sure.
So for like Notre Dame, having a Supreme Court justice that came from Notre Dame, that actually lends them credence for AAU status. But Arizona State, George Washington, the University of Cal at Riverside, University of Miami, University of Notre Dame, and the University of South Florida are all who was invited to the AAU the last go round.
Yeah, that was like a 6-person class. There have been 1 school classes. There have rarely been classes bigger than 6, except for during the founding of it. And there was a gap there as well. That's why COVID was in between. So I think they caught up a little bit.
So now CFB is not main criteria. Newer growth, student growth, elitism in academia, medical schools, etc. So UNC can't check all the boxes, but suck at football and football eyeballs, but they get a pass. Yes, because it comes down to money. It comes down to money.
Look, I understand you're probably frustrated. We don't know what will happen ultimately, right? NC State isn't exactly blowing away North Carolina in viewership over the years either, but it has been better on the football side. And it's definitely last year. We'll see what happens in Belichick. But yeah, it sucks when you're hearing someone is a big rival in an in-state school and people are speculating that they have a better shot at it. So I understand the frustration, Doc.
Yeah, I get the frustration, Doc, but it's just, I think I'm trying to remember back to my presentation. I think UNC is the number 4 public school in America. It's rated behind, Michigan is one of them, unfortunately. And I believe Cal Berkeley is number 1, but I could be wrong.
I mean, it's Virginia, Cal Berkeley, UCLA, all Washington, of those are like in the top 15. Yeah. Top 15 overall in the top 4 or 5 or 6 public nationals.
Tony Lawson says, Rock and Rant, that's a very nice background. He must appreciate. Wait, I don't see Minnesota up or.
Minnesota's there.
Where am I missing that at?
Next to the UCLA, the M.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was looking for the Gopher. I thought he was mistaken the UCLA Bear for the Gopher.
No, a little bit of love for the people that I do shows with or got me into it. So that's a little shout out for Greg, but I can be bought. You can buy your way off.
Absolutely. I think you ought to put an LSU one up there and a Wisconsin one for Ryan Willie.
The only thing that can't be removed is the one dead center that's hanging upside down. That just has to stay. It's a personal preference.
Did you know there's a female Florida Gators mascot?
I did. Did you know that there's a female Miami mascot? Because I didn't until like about 3 months ago. Apparently,
I had no idea.
There was one to match the ibis.
Tar Heel says TCU is a G5 equivalent. Arizona is picked over Arizona State.
I would be stunned if Arizona was picked over Arizona State.
Yeah, Arizona State's in the presentation too, but I think Arizona State has a lot of the same problems that other schools have with getting that separation because they're controlled. Kansas State are going to have that issue. Arizona State's going to have that issue. North Carolina State are dealing with that issue.
But in a vacuum, if they weren't tied to whatever degree those two are tied, like AAU plus Phoenix market, and the size of that school is pretty significant among all the levers, so to speak.
Sure. Moan and Rock and Rant, since UNC is the first domino, is FSU at least a domino? In my opinion, Finn, 4 dominoes fall at the same time to the SEC. I think it's one fell swoop. I think they get North Carolina, Virginia, Clemson, and Florida State. Boom.
Look, there's no scenario where FSU isn't one of the, the leading things there. If you listen to Greg Flugar and his show, like there seems to be different sequencing in his mind. The thing we all really want to know is how many schools is SEC willing to go to and how many schools is the Big Ten willing to go to? Because after that, it's easy. Like we keep talking about all of the permutations. What we don't really know is SEC really only going to ever go to 20 or 18? Is the Big Ten really 20, 24? We know it's not 21, but it could be 21. If it goes to 20 and they only want one more, Notre Dame finally says yes, like they'll figure out a way to do a 21 school conference, right? If they really don't want anybody else. But they'll probably likely go to 22 or 24. That's really the magic.
I think the thing to keep in mind here is you have to keep in mind, you have to have a travel partner. Like the Big Ten just can't add Miami without a travel partner. Got to have somebody down there. I get it. Miami's a lot closer than, say, Los Angeles, but still. Speaking of which, we got 5 gifted memberships. 5 more people can watch that presentation as soon as we get it finished up. Thank you, MBM, for gifting 5 memberships. That went to Anthony Manzano, John Mentzer, Morris Simmons, RT, and Timothy Green, the OG. We're all gifted a membership by our good friend MBM. MBM, I apologize. It's been a busy weekend. I didn't get any gunshots or cowboy sound effects on this bad boy yet. So let me see. What's one we haven't used in a while? Student athletes. Well, if that'll play.
That's a good one, though.
Student athletes. Oh, that is brilliant, sir.
And here we go.
I'm a bad man. You hear me?
And the Blues Brothers.
We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
Thank you, MBM, for your continued generosity to the college football mafia. Anthony Manzano, John Mentzer, Morris Simmons, RT, Timothy Green, the OG. If you guys are in chat, make sure you thank MBM for doing that. MBM, we appreciate it. We will see you for that members-only live stream where we discuss the best contenders for the Big Ten. Yeah, we got that one. John Boxleitner asked, didn't some big members vote to kick Nebraska out of the AAU? They absolutely did. I don't think there's any one of them that didn't vote to kick Nebraska out of the AAU. And it's because at the time, Nebraska just recently left the Big 12 for the Big 10. Texas had a lot of sway in the AAU, and they made it so you couldn't count medical research that was not done at your main campus towards AAU membership research inclusion. So Nebraska, if you don't know, UNL, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, does not have a medical center on its campus. It's actually located in Omaha. Since then, Nebraska was supposed to do things to alleviate this issue and increase research in other areas to get back in the AAU. And it has not happened as of yet. And I don't think that it ever will.
It's like Forrest Gump. They all got together and said, you can't sit here.
Absolutely. Joe Applewhite says, I know there are unsourced rumors about Stanford not wanting to join the Big Ten Academic Alliance. Their sources. None of that would apply to Cal, though. Cal outranks UNC academically and was passed by Fox. They absolutely were, because Fox already had 2 schools in the California marketplace, and Cal was always going to be handcuffed to Stanford. And they still may be handcuffed to Stanford. But hey, I wouldn't be shocked if they take Stanford and another West Coast school.
Would you be surprised if Stanford abandons Cal, or do you think they'd be fine because they'd just be like, we'll just play our game anyway?
Look, Stanford's ruthless. That's a private school with a ruthless mentality of survival of the fittest. They would cut Cal's throat at the first opportunity. Stormy Cyclone says, how much super chat would it take to have Rock and Rant sport a Cyclone hat?
You know, like, you gotta get me a real one, not some like knockoff on Amazon.
Here's a question.
That wouldn't even be painful. I could have even lost a bad bet if you had placed the bet before we started eating cherry Pop-Tarts or whatever one you guys chose that day.
How about, how much would it take to stop me from going over there and getting the Iowa Hawkeyes hat that I wear for Big Ten Mafia and putting it on Stormy Cyclone?
Look, like, I can be bought. You know, we're this is the CFB Mafia. We can be bought.
That's right.
It's better than knocking off of parking meters and trying to get the change out of them in an era where they just take debit cards, and I can't do that anymore.
Great scene from Donnie Brasco. Numbskull would have to change his draws if TCU gets the invite. Yeah, he probably would. I think I would have to change my drawers if TCU gets the invite after the analysis I've done.
I think it's very possible that Numbskull news might be indirectly or unknowingly related to Doc, because nobody dislikes North Carolina as a viable expansion candidate than Numbskull. He's out on his own limb about them.
Will ACC getting cracked mean the Big 12 will crack as well? Listen, there's some interesting candidates in the Big 12 for the Big 10. I used to think Kansas was really an SEC candidate. I don't think so as much anymore, but I think Kansas, Colorado, Utah, Arizona State are all that would be considered for Big 10 inclusion, assuming they go to 24.
You've gone back and forth on that too in your mind, I think, Moen. Like, there are moments when you've been very much that it's
well, listen, Kansas
a 20 and done.
Kansas has been actively against private equity for so long. That whole private equity Redbird Capital deal, I know for a fact, I've heard from people who aren't even at Kansas schools, but who are in other schools, that Kansas is a very active no voter. And I have to believe they're a very active no voter on that, because they believe there's still an opportunity to get into the Power 2. TCU, Kansas, Arizona State, all mentioned by people in these chats as possible big SEC gets. Listen, TCU, the one thing TCU has going for it is the fact that it is located where it is located. It's a huge media market, and do you want to get a flag put in Texas?
Right. So for the big, I think they have potential value at some point. For the SEC, 0, because then you go back to, you already have Texas and Texas A&M. And if I'm not mistaken, on average, those two schools outdraw TV-wise, specifically in terms of like the market in Dallas, just based off the nature of those schools forever.
Almighty Finn says, my niece lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've watched SEC Network at her house. I live in Indiana and watch SEC Network all the time. Hey, listen, I don't watch SEC Network all the time, but I pay for it.
Right. The difference on Mighty Finn is a lot of the contracts for the SEC Network and the Big Ten Network are that if you're in a state without a school, the cable provider pays like 20 cents. And if there's a school in there and it's a bigger get for them, the fee goes up. So it's a combination of new state, new fees, existing state, higher fees in some of the deals. Maybe not all. Things could be changing over time, but there are at least some of those grandfathered in.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But I have to think, if you're a national, like, let's say and we had this discussion on Friday. Nate disagrees with me. Ute disagrees with me. Florida State's a national brand. You add Florida State to an ESPN package, it automatically increases the value of the ESPN package. They can charge more. When they do their direct-to-consumer product, they can charge more because they're going to be the exclusive home of Florida State athletics.
Right. That is the one. I'm on your page with all of that and those analysis, like where you're establishing a metric for how much a school is worth in its current conference. The Big Ten isn't getting paid whatever it is, $70 million a year, because like Northwestern and Purdue are worth $70 million a year, going up to $95 to $100 million. It's the blended rate of the conference is worth that. When you take a school like Florida State and Clemson, and now you have that many additional matchups in those conferences, those schools are going to draw better. Yes, it's not necessarily they're going to draw a ton more if they play Purdue, if Purdue continues to stay down despite the coaching changes. But those 3 or 4 games against other top tiers fundamentally change how much a school like Florida State is worth if you move them into a different location. If you take my house, and it's a really great house, and you're living in the middle of Kansas and have a great community, it's worth X. If you take that house and you put it in the middle of Malibu, it's worth more, even though it's the same house. That's my bad analogy for the day, but maybe I'm going to use it against you and Nate in the future when this conversation comes up and I'm watching you guys argue on a Friday.
UNC grad lets us know it's UCLA, Cal, Michigan, UNC in that order. I've seen ones where Michigan's a little higher than that, but yeah, you're right. That's generally the top 4 public institutions in the United States of America. And then Tar Heel chimes in 6 Power 4 original public Ivies: UCLA, Cal, Michigan, UVA, UNC, and Texas. The Big Lubbock says you need to dump the A&M logo on the wall.
I'm willing to trade it. It just is not going for. Do I have Texas on? I can't. You
can't put
do this. I just refuse to do it. Though I absolutely love Austin as a place, personally. But yeah, again, I can. Big Lubbock, man, you guys are spending. Come on, we can do it. Make a deal.
Tar Heel says that Arizona is the flagship. Not disagreeing with you there, but I think they would still take Arizona State over Arizona. AAU membership, man, market. Arizona State's got a lot of things going for it. I think the one thing it doesn't is that it is tied to Arizona. Coos chiming in here. I just realized the gator on R&R wall is upside down. I love it. Yeah, I saw a thing on Twitter this week that LeBron James has his special Nikes or whatever brand that he wears. He's got the M in James X'd out.
Yeah, my wall is fairly easy to understand, but it is negotiable. There are shout outs to the people who I do shows with. There's shout outs to family members who went to a school like Tennessee, as an example. There's rivals. There's schools I've always loved, like West Virginia, as a thing. And then there are the ones that like are very transient and they could go away. FIU just because you had to have some G5 representation up there, and that was close to Miami. So there you go.
Put them Ohio Bobcats on there. Tony Washington says 20 is plenty for a conference, and then Tar Heel says Miami is Notre Dame's +1. I could see it, but Stanford's going to have to say no first. I think the Big Ten would definitely prefer to have Stanford and Notre Dame than Miami and Notre Dame. And it's not a shot against Miami. It's just being in a partnership with Stanford is a license to really print money. They're by far the biggest research institution in the United States of America. Oh, you're not going to correct me and say I'm wrong for not taking Miami?
I'm not. I try to be not completely homer. I mean, Fox, if you want to know the answer to that question one day of like whether the Big Ten presidents or chancellors control realignment or whether Fox does, that would probably be the definition of your answer.
MBM says I'll take a sweet Cartman. I don't have that yet. I will get that put on the list. I also want to get respect my authorita put on the list as well. But you gave 5 memberships. I'll give you another South Park one here just for that.
You know what I am saying?
I believe I know what you were saying.
Awesome.
So Big Ten will always keep a spot for Notre Dame. Notre Dame just has to phone in. Absolutely. They've had an open invite for 50 plus years, guys.
Where Moen and I disagree is I think that, or I don't even know if disagree. I believe that Notre Dame will be the last one into a conference, not the first, not the middle. They will only do it when they absolutely, really, really have no choice and they can't get a schedule. And I think they will exhaust all options to get a viable schedule that does not piss off NBC before they do it. Now, that doesn't mean that couldn't get accelerated. A lot of things can happen. A lot of things change, but as it currently stands, that's where my hot take is versus others who think that they can get forced sooner. If I know Greg Flugard will talk about how if the ACC breaks up, they have an issue with their Olympic sports and where do they house them in a way that's competitive. So like maybe that's actually a bigger factor than I think, and that is that. But that also implies that the ACC has completely collapsed and the Olympic sports substitutes are not viable enough to then give up your football independence.
Yeah, and listen, in the 90s, they had informal discussions, the conference in Notre Dame. Originally, what most people thought would be a good idea was Penn State coming in at 11, Notre Dame coming in at 12. They just couldn't nail Notre Dame down then. And again, if you're a member of the channel, go back and look at my timeline video I did. I believe if Notre Dame had joined the Big Ten at that point, we wouldn't have these monstrous, huge conferences now. I think the Big Ten would have held at 12. The Big 12 would have held at 12. I think the SEC would have went up to 12 in that timeline. So definitely check it out. FSU has no path to a 20-team SEC or big. I disagree with you. Guys, listen, I get it. Florida State pissed some people off, but Florida State makes you money. ESPN is not going to let Florida State just go to the Big Ten and take that brand with them. Roll Tide roll. UCF, West Virginia to ACC when top brands leave. It's said to be possible. I don't think that UCF or West Virginia, well, UCF might, but West Virginia is probably going to get travel partners now, legitimate travel partners like Pitt and Virginia Tech and possibly North Carolina State. I think Virginia Tech is actually, or West Virginia is going to be the best, who's going to reap the most rewards from a Big 12 expansion.
Yeah, Louisville, those kind of things for sure.
King Spleen says, could it be UNC is favored by the league presidents, but Fox and ESPN favor FSU? Maybe people have more sourcing in universities admin versus network offices. I'd bet Prez won't turn down extra cash. Great point, King Spleen. I will just remind you that Oregon and Washington applied for Big Ten membership the day after they found out that USC and UCLA were leaving for the Big Ten. It then took more than 18 months to get Oregon into the Big Ten. They had to fight and fight and fight to get Oregon in. And that's because there was Ohio State and a pretty substantial number of schools that were very no on Oregon. There were even, Nate hates this, but Utah was suggested as a candidate to travel with. Stanford was suggested as a candidate to travel with. But in order to get Washington in, the networks pushed for Oregon. And there was a lot of horse trading that went on. So,
and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Moen, but I know the SEC has a pro rata deal. They could choose not to give somebody a full deal, right? But in theory, a new school could come in and they can get the same amount that everybody else is doing. And they can decide if they want to negotiate to give the presidents, quote unquote, more money. The ACC has it too, which is what begot getting SMU, Cal, and Stanford, and they didn't get the full share. But I thought Big Ten didn't have that in the current deal, which is why they had to go back and maybe that's why they had, USC and UCLA were able to get 100% share from the get-go, but the other two schools, because the deal had just started, were only able to get 50%. So if I'm right about that, correct me if I'm wrong, that means that the presidents did not get more money in the short term. They were just able to get more money in for Oregon and Washington, or am I completely high there? And they got a pro rata deal and only chose to give them a 0.5%.
No. They did not get a pro rata deal. What Oregon and Washington are getting paid is what Fox ponied up. CBS and NBC actually don't even pay a portion of Oregon and Washington. That's all 100% straight Fox money.
Which is entertaining when you hear all the bitching that we hear rumored about from NBC that they're not happy with their Big Ten deal. So they wanted to do nothing to help get more people in or more payments in, and then they're unhappy that Fox is getting all the prime games.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting that Oregon, Ohio State was one of the highest rated games of the season, and it was in prime time on NBC. So, and NBC didn't cover any of that cost. So
there's a little bit different.
Yeah,
so Big Ten is unlikely to get more money. The point going back to this is the Big Ten presidents in the near term, unless Fox, NBC, CBS were to pony up more money in the contract, wouldn't get more money by new schools coming in at the moment. They might get more other things esoterically, or they can get a new deal negotiated from Fox like they did for Washington and Oregon. But when the new deal gets renegotiated and whatever that is, 2030, 2031, then they would reap the rewards of bringing those schools in. For sure. Not that they couldn't do it beforehand, but it just would take some new maneuvering. But there's other things outside of the media deal that could bring value to give them more money, so to speak, in the meantime.
Yeah, and again, we don't know that media deal is lasting till 2031. They could choose to extend that.
They can choose to rip it up.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon and Washington could end up with full shares at 2031, but then the contract itself could have already been extended to 2036. All we know is that there's only Notre Dame is the only escalator in that contract. It's the only named school that is an escalator. Everybody else would have to be negotiated. And the other point I want to keep in mind here, guys, it's not saying that the presidents have 100% and the network has no say. It's a balance. It's a balance. The network wanted Oregon. The network ended up getting Oregon. It took them 18 months to get them in, but they got Oregon. Michigan and Wisconsin, who were the biggest supporters of Washington, they got Washington in. They weren't particularly fond of Oregon, but they let them in to get Washington. Ohio State was a holdout on Oregon, and so were some other smaller schools behind Ohio State, but Ohio State was promised something in order to accept Oregon into the conference. And that was that Ohio State would have first say on who they expand with in conference realignment. And we're going to have that say. They're not going to be able to backtrack on us because, spoiler alert, if you watch Wild Utes video tomorrow at noon, Ohio State's one of the top 5 brands. And they bring a lot of money. A lot of money.
And rumor has it that Ohio State on some level happens to like Miami, as I've heard.
That rumor says. That's what rumor says.
That rumor by Greg Flugar.
MBM says can't have medical research off campus, but we can add teams in California. Yeah. Well, that's the AAU. That's not the Big Ten saying that. That's the AAU says that.
Yeah. Big Ten is only 18 of the votes. 17, sorry, not Nebraska. 17 votes of all the AAU members. So they can't single-handedly.
Yeah, and keep this in mind too. The AAU, we say it's a country club. It really is, because a lot of that get rid of Nebraska came from Texas. So a jaded Texas from Nebraska fleeing the Big 12 to the Big 10. I believe their president was the head of the AAU at the time, something like that. I know Texas had a heavy hand in that.
Yeah, Texas was not happy that Nebraska was not paying their locker room fees.
Yeah, and I mean, Stormy Cyclone, he's in the chat. He'll tell you the same thing. Iowa State just left the AAU because they keep changing what qualifies for people to be in the AAU, and they felt that Iowa State was either close to review or they were under review, and they just said, screw that, and they left. And I don't blame them.
Yeah, we're not endorsing anything one way or the other. We're just explaining the things the best that we know about it.
Yeah, Stanford has the most Olympic golds by a long shot. Oh yeah, their Olympic sports are. Yeah, their Olympic sports produce Olympic gold medalists.
I mean, they have endowed toilets in their freaking athletic facilities at this point. So,
would the Big prefer Miami to Florida State? Miami appears to be a Big Ten fit. I don't know. Don't know. I guess we'll find out. For me, I think the Big Ten would prefer Miami. But, I mean, they could just as easily take Miami and Florida State. They could double up in the state of Florida because Miami is kind of its own little almost conclave from the rest of Florida.
it is a very different world. Though there are Florida State alums and students who are from South Florida as a state school.
Morris Simmons. I'm law with people thinking that Big and FSU are going to wait for North Carolina to separate themselves from NC State. I believe a good portion of that Carolina blue matter that attorney was looking into was how to separate from North Carolina State. Illini Ted, I understand why Florida State did what they did going public, but I'm beginning to wonder if the P2 both were scared off by the bad publicity they brought forward by doing that. Any thoughts?
I think ultimately you're not worrying about when somebody has a fit. I think they're probably more. I think it's probably more likely that the schools in the lower part of the Big Ten want to just make sure that a school like Florida State isn't going to use the things that they use to get the settlement against them the minute after they're in their new conference. Like Purdue doesn't want to find out that Florida State is like the deciding vote on unequal revenue share after they vote them in 2 years later.
Yeah, again, I don't think it makes much of a difference. I think you're going to end up with a balance. You're going to get football brands that help carry academics and academics that help carry football brands.
Right. And in that case, you football brand wise, FSU's brand, despite last year, is kind of without question.
Yeah, outside of Notre Dame, they're probably the top football brand available. Morris Simmons says, I do believe an announcement will come before UNC. Okay. I've got my money on right now, it all coming at once. I think it's a one-stroke, 4-team add to the SEC, and the Big Ten then has a choice to make.
Yeah. I think whenever it's going to happen, the next round is going to be endgame. Like, I think everyone is tired of the flux, right? Like, just do what you're going to do, make it something that sticks for a while, and have it all happen. I think I can see it being a little bit different, possibly with a couple of things happening at the same time. I still think somebody from the ACC could very likely, who's not going to be probably in the SEC or Big Ten, might make a move to make sure that they're not on the short end of the stick to get to the Big 12 when they think the Big 12 might only go to X amount of more teams. But I think we could have one of those things where everybody is drunk at the same time.
I want to thank everybody for coming in here tonight. We've got over 100 viewers watching us here on YouTube. If you could, guys, we've got about 10 to 15 more minutes to go. If you're here, if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and click that like button. If you're new to the channel, please go ahead and become a subscriber. Turn your notifications on so you can see when that Wild Ute video pops up tomorrow with the top 5 brands in college football. I've got enough comments starred here to go through for the rest of the show. So if anybody has a must-have, must-read, it would have to be a super chat. I want to thank everybody who came in here tonight and has supported already, and I'll give you more shout-outs towards the end. But I want to play a sound clip first. We'll do this.
You just got to keep living, man. Livin.
Got to keep living.
All right.
Mick Stevens says there are over 100,000 alumni of Big Ten schools within 1 hour of TCU. I'm not denying that, Mick, but there's other factors. There's a lot of factors. Tune in for the members-only live stream.
That number is pretty big in South Florida too. I don't know if it's 100,000 big, but it's pretty big.
It's big in Atlanta also.
Yeah, DFW is that whole area is a bigger DMA than South Florida is by itself. So,
Cooz's Corner. Always good to see Cooz in here. If you're not subscribed and following Cooz and you love West Virginia Mountaineer stuff, definitely click on his name and head over to his page and go check him out. West Virginia will never get a Power 2 invite. I have already started to mentally prepare myself for that. Have to hope the Big 12 remains a power conference long term. I think that's where we're heading, Coos. I see 3 conferences on the horizon, a Big 10, an SEC, and a Big 12.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, from a historical perspective, West Virginia is a top 25 easy football legacy. So,
absolutely. Our friend Go Black 45. If Ohio State got promises for letting Oregon in, what does UGA and Bama get for letting FSU and Clemson in with UNC and UVA? Again, horse trading. I wouldn't be shocked. They'll probably get something. What it is, I don't know. But I'm sure, listen, I'm sure Texas is going to get something out of it too. Any big brand in there that stands in the way is going to end up getting that for themselves. They're going to get horse traded. So aim high, Bama and Georgia, and then make them think you settled low when you got everything you wanted. Let me see here. Let me give you a sound effect here. We'll let him cook. We haven't done that tonight.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Thank you for the super chat, Go Black 45. I hope that answers your question. Make sure you tell the folks down there in LSU they should do likewise. You and Opie get on the horn and say, hey, make sure we get this demand for LSU letting Florida State and Clemson into the SEC. Thank you for the super chat again, sir. Coy just became a YouTube member. Thank you very much, Coy. That is much appreciated. We'll give you a little crowd cheer. Well, I only wanted it once. Soundboard, thank you. Keep your eyes tuned to the channel, Coy, where you can join us for that members-only live stream that's coming up. I know you also has a members-only video coming up, too, that I think you'll definitely want to check out. We did a poll on Friday, and it came up 50-50. Who's true to get 24 in both the SEC and Big is adding 14 schools. That does give a lot of room for West Virginia, especially if the SEC goes to 24. Listen, I get everybody's dream big, dream big, dream big. Dream big, but don't expect big. Hope for the best, expect the worst, as the song says. Moan, do you think North Carolina State, Virginia Tech are travel partners to the Big 12? I think the best 4 teams for the Big 12 are Pitt, Virginia Tech, North Carolina State, and Louisville.
pretty clear.
You concur on that one?
Yeah, I mean, you can make an argument about Georgia Tech for sure on that as well. But they might have they may have a seat at the other table.
Morris Simmons, UNC, Gorilla Glue at NC State are stuck. Now, I believe that there can be an arrangement made. Louisville, Cincinnati is a rivalry, just like West Virginia and Cincinnati's a rivalry too. I think adding Cincinnati did a lot to help West Virginia, but I think if you're the Big 12, adding more East Coast time slots is going to help you more than anything else, especially going towards your next media deal where you might be trying to get away from ESPN and Fox altogether. I think they need to be reaching out right now to Time Warner or whatever it's called, Warner Brothers Discovery, and talk to them about possibly becoming their sole media partner and partnering up with them on the Big 12 network. Kuz's Corner says if the new president can help improve student enrollment and academic rankings and they start winning in football and men's basketball games again, maybe I'll feel better. I agree with you 100%, Kuz. I have family ties to West Virginia University, and I think it's absolutely terrible what has happened to that university. That used to be a premier university that kids from Ohio wanted to go to, and they just keep dropping programs and everything else. I think it's terrible. I think somebody should have stepped in and did something a long time ago. The college football mafia would have to hold a week-long wait for Bomber if you got an invite to the Big Ten. All right, well, I might push for Utah to the Big Ten now. I might.
I mean, Bomber would probably live stream for like 196 hours straight.
He probably would. What got the AACC messed up was catering to basketball instead of focusing on football. That's why the ACC will be G5 in a minute. I think, Finn, there's a lot of elements that went into it. But the moment you signed a 20-year deal and thought it would bring stability, when you had the Big Ten and the SEC waiting to sign new deals that dwarfed yours, I think that probably hurt them more than anything else. There was no hope for him at that point.
The TV deal was definitely just a bad idea. I don't know that they completely messed up on catering to basketball. I think they definitely have always leaned that way. But like in defense and being fair, like as opposed to some people, Miami and Virginia Tech were ads to help get football even stronger, and neither of them, especially Miami, lived up to it in the preceding 10 years. But even if they both had done that and won a national title or done something in between, that deal is still freaking injecting poison into the lifeblood of your future conference the way it all played out.
Yeah, you're basically limiting yourself. You're saying we
You're
have
betting on
stability, but
safety.
we're limited.
They bet themselves on safety because they didn't want to we are all still waiting for an actual TV sports media deal to have a down round. Maybe not as big of a growth, but a down round. So in that case, if you were so desperate to get to ACC network that you sold your soul for 20 years and you lost the bet.
MBM wants to know if Bob Thompson helped facilitate getting Oregon into the Big Ten. Not that I'm aware of. You could ask Bob that, I'm sure. Wait a couple weeks. Bob Thompson will probably be on another interview segment with Nate on Tuesday or Wednesday. I would ask him then, but as far to my knowledge, I don't believe he did.
Listen, Bob Thompson would be a much better person to keep state secrets than some of the people we have in office right now. He's never going to give away all of his information there. I would guess he probably knew something about what was going on, though.
Elliot Howard, breaking news, Florida State and Miami to the Big Ten after the 2026 season. There you go.
Listen, I think that would be amazing. That would be great. I don't have any issue with Miami going with Florida State. I would prefer it, honestly. I just caution. I feel like there's a lot of momentum about things happening between now and August 15th for anyone. And I know there's been reports out there, and I'm not downplaying them, but like I have watched this movie a couple of times, so I'm just a little bit skeptical on timelines, not outcomes.
Here's a great question from our friend Vox Quindaro. Could the Big Ten get the U for 50%? You're a Miami fan. Would you take 50% for the length of the next media deal?
Yeah, and about like how fast, what's the Venmo? Jose Mas, owner of the Miami Football Club, and he'll send it.
Still, it's 165 to get out this year or to announce for 1 year. Even in 2 years, guys, that's still a pretty big number.
I've done the math, and I'm not even Ute.
I know you've done the math. We did it in Carolina Reaper, but I'm just saying
it's 20. If you waited for 1 year, it's like $27 million is the gap between like what you would have done at a higher level and down, and that doesn't even include whether or not you get more research money, more butts in seats, more travel into South Florida for away games, which would be one of the premier destinations for Big Ten schools alums to make a road trip to. For the city, like it takes no time whatsoever, and if you guarantee you're going to be in place for the new contract when you get trued up, like Oregon and Washington, Miami, Florida State, whoever, they're not going to wait in the Big Ten on a new renegotiated deal for a decade plus, like Rutgers and Maryland did, to be made whole. That's not what's going to happen with those brands.
I don't know. I think Oregon and Washington, the way it is worded, they 100% get a full share in 2031. But these new, I don't know. Again, how
I would be
far
stunned. I would be
Listen,
stunned if you got those big level brands who actually draw TV ratings to have to take a half share for more than the extent of the current contract to the way that we know it, or maybe the same equal amount of years that Oregon and Washington had to do it just for politics reason. But if Oregon and Washington didn't have to pay the piper for as long as Rutgers and Maryland have, I don't think that's going to be. I think it's more likely to be the time frame that in Oregon and Washington are having to pay for anybody else who joins than it has been for Rutgers and Maryland. It's just my gut.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, for the Big Ten anyway, is Notre Dame joining? Because Notre Dame is guaranteed money for themselves, plus 3 additional pro ratas with nobody making more money. So if you can bring in Notre Dame and bring in their partner at 50%, you could even bring them in at 100%. It still makes the money go up for everybody. But if you wanted to add, you could technically add up to 6 more schools at half share if you wanted to do it that way. I don't think they're going to add 6 more schools, but I'm just saying you could do it that way. But you're going to get hit with that huge media contract renewal in 2030, 31. Who knows if you're going to get the same money. Again, we talked about it a little bit on Friday. I think you're going to see in 2026, 2027, I think the Big Ten and the SEC are both going to extend their media deals. And I think there's a lot of signs pointing towards that. The Big Ten SEC scheduling agreement, that'll have to be negotiated. Media partners are going to have to pay more money for that on both sides. Conference play-in games for the playoffs, media partners are going to have to pay for that on both sides. SEC ninth conference game, media partners are going to have to pay for that on the SEC side. If you've got an expanded Big Ten, say you're up to 24. Let's just say for the sake of argument, you're at 24 with 10 conference games. Media partners on the Big Ten side are going to have to negotiate to pay for that. So I could easily see the Big Ten and the SEC actually extending their deals in 2026, 2027, right when all this conference expansion and realignment is taking place.
Absolutely.
Got another super chat here from our buddy Ryan Willie. I want Wild Ute to be so wrong about realignment. You can make any number work to get the result you want. It's true. Ute doesn't necessarily do that, but he does rely on data. His data point's a lot more than every other data point. And, I'll bring this up here. We mentioned it earlier, Ryan, but I don't know if you were here and saw this. You don't see ratings numbers anywhere on this commonality. These are the core commonalities of every Big Ten school for the most part. Nebraska obviously left out with AAU membership. But, you don't see television ratings on there. Television ratings do not make a Big Ten school necessarily. You can be added for other reasons. Rutgers and Maryland were added to get New York and D.C. markets because you had the Big Ten network coming out and you wanted to add those carriage fees on there. So, again, I'm not a huge believer in just one thing does it. I think you've got to have balance like you did with Oregon and Washington. I think you take somebody for academics and who fits that Big Ten mold, then you take somebody that maybe the network's like that doesn't go too far along away from the mold of the Big Ten. Take like a Miami. Case in point, because Rock and Rant's here, Miami is already AAU, have a medical school on campus. Miami is a huge DMA. Networks would probably like Miami very much. The Big Ten, probably not over their head about taking another private school, but they would probably do it if the networks would allow them to take Miami and then fund another school that they may like more. Like a Kansas or Georgia Tech.
All very possible.
All very possible. Thank you for the super chat, Ryan. I gave you an evil laugh earlier, so I'll give you your Badger sounds now. I haven't even done any media assets tonight. Let's throw this up here for you. There you go. Evil Badger. Kaiju Badger. All right, let's go through here. We'll let this one be the last one. It's from our friend Vox Quindaro. The U screams big. But what do I know?
If you want to get into Florida and you're okay with adding a private institution, it's definitely a candidate. There's probably, 4 or 5 really obvious candidates for the Big Ten, depending upon which direction you want to go, and definitely includes the North Carolinas and Florida States among them.
Absolutely. I want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight. Again, if you're watching us for the first time, click that subscribe button. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and leave us a give us a like or dislike. If you didn't like what you see, leave us a comment if you liked or didn't like what you heard. I want to thank in particular everybody for making this such a great March for us. I want to thank Rock and Rant for being such a great co-host. And I want to shout out some money. Ryan Willie resubscribed for 14 months, a 14-month membership to the College Football Mafia. That's legitness.
That was legitness. Yeah, it was. Huh?
Opie Didon dropping the 25-piece super chat. Let's give him a little oh. Thank you, Opie Didon. MBM gifted us a 5-piece, and he likes South Park sound effects. Let's give him one of these.
First, the money started going, and now everyone's getting laid off work. They took our jobs. They took our jobs.
Nobody will be taking our jobs thanks to you, MBM. Thank you for the 5 gifted memberships to the community. Go Black 45 with the $5 super chat. Thank you, Go Black 45. You're a winner. And then Ryan Willie with the $5 super. Coy became a new member. Thank you, Coy. What is best in life?
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women.
And then Ryan Willie with a super chat. I don't know if I played another sound for him, but let's hot.
Oh, hot.
And then to cap it off, Coy, who just recently became a member, he gifted a membership, and that membership went to Tom DeMay. I don't know if you're in chat, Tom, or if you can get it in there quickly enough, but make sure you thank Coy in the comments if you would. If you're watching on demand, just go ahead and drop a like in there and say, hey, thanks, Coy, for giving me that membership. Now I can watch the new upcoming Big Ten members-only live stream on Core Commonalities. Coy, it is much appreciated, sir.
Thanks, Coy.
You know what? We haven't done any drinking tonight. I don't know if you're a Georgia Tech fan. Hey. So for myself, for Rock and Rant, for everybody at the College Football Mafia, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all your support. Have a great evening, and we will see you next Sunday.